Okay.
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 All right. Next question, please.
I'm just wondering. Yes, I'm just wondering how it's decided who's like the head of the blacks or the head of the Mexicans or something like that.
Okay. So in Arizona, each gang has a head,
Yeah.
and it's all racial gangs. And how it's decided in the jail where I was at, where there's a lot of people constantly coming in and out,
Mm-hmm.
was by fighting. Usually, you know, whoever was the head of the race, he would have to fight any challengers. There was a guy, there's a story from my book Hard Time actually, there was a guy in there who I got along with really well. He was the head of the race, he was an Italian guy, he was a bit more level-headed than the Aryan Brotherhood guys, and he was a Golden Gloves boxer, and he became the head of the race, and he won his first several fights, and he was loving it. It's power, you get to tell the guys what to do, you get extra food, you got your own little kingdom within this environment. But the fight continued as he got more and more challenges, because if anyone disrespects the head of the race, you must fight right away. The rule is, if you don't fight, everyone else attacks you. So he's had about a dozen fights by now. He's got his knuckles broke, he's getting pieces of his teeth knocked out. He's getting sick of it. And in the end, he just stepped down. He couldn't take it anymore. In the end, he stepped down. A guy had come from the prison system into the pod who was part of the Aryan Brotherhood, and he just handed it over to him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, say an existing head of the race suddenly gets moved out of a pod. What they do is then they have what's called, if it's for the white race, for my race, the Aryan Brotherhood, they hold what's called a white boy meeting. So everyone who's white has to go to a cell, and then you vote on who you want the head of the race to be. So all the races do this. So if that happened with the blacks, they would have the same thing. So I had to participate in certain white boy meetings where we would vote on the head of the race, and we would vote on other issues, concerning the race. And most of the violence in jail is within a race, because the gangs, they don't want race riots. What happens if there's a race riot? The whole jail is locked down. The major thing for the gangs is the drug business. 90% of the guys are shooting up heroin and crystal meth. It's a massive money maker for the gang. If the jail is locked down for 3 days plus after a riot, that business stops. So say two people have a problem in the jail, and if people start to jump in on each person's side, it would escalate. So that the rules are, if two people have a problem, they must have a fight in a cell, out of view of the camera, preferably under the stairs, so the guards can't see it, so the jail won't get locked down. And once they've had the fight, then they say that the beef is squashed. There's no issue between the two people. And you'll often see them right after the fight, the two people have had a fight having a smoke together from tobacco that's been illegally smuggled in. So that's how it's considered normal. Jailhouse fights are just considered a normal part of everyday life. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next question, please.
Do you know if there are any gangs formed in women's prisons at all? Because I know about the families and stuff, but are there gangs?
Okay, women do join street gangs, and when you come to prison, whatever your street gang affiliation is, stops, and you're then part of a racial gang. So I imagine if you have a woman coming in, you've been a member of some street gang, when you go to the big house, you have to click up with whatever race you're with, because that's how it is in Arizona. Now in England, traditionally it's been gangs that have been competing to control the drugs. But the racial gang thing is starting now in the UK. Everything's following 5 to 10 years behind. You've got Blood and Crips in the London prisons now. A lot of the slang I'm hearing now when I go to London, that even young people in schools are using as well as in the prisons, it's all coming from the US. They're all copying the style from the US prison system. So it's getting more and more like it here. Yeah. Okay, next question please.
When you're released from prison in the US, are you given any sort of help or advice so that when you come out you're less likely to resort back to the violent behaviour?
No, in America, you're not given any education or rehabilitation. What they do is they give you $50 called gate money when you're getting released. And they just have a nice life, and that's about it. I met guys in there one guy, he got out of his gate money, And the police picked him up right away and took it in lieu of a fine, some kind of traffic violation he'd done. So he had no game money left. And he had no choice but to go and steal some clothes and some food. Otherwise, he was homeless, he was sleeping behind a dumpster. And you know, he couldn't eat and he couldn't clothe himself. So, I'm not making excuses for him committing crimes, but the odds are stacked against these guys. They really are. And it seems to be by design so that they come right back to the prison system. And they make characters for themselves in prison. You know, they make names for themselves, they're characters. When they get out, they're scorned by society, but when they get back in, it's all high fives. There was one guy who served 25 years in the prison system I was in, and he was so adjusted to prison life. He got out and he couldn't deal with normal society. So he just went and confessed to a murder he committed that hadn't been discovered, and they gave him another 25-year sentence, and he was just happy to be back in prison with his buddies. Yeah. Okay, next question, please.
I was wondering if you thought there was any other reason why the guards act so aggressively, because obviously they're loved ones and they get to leave the prison. So.
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, that journalist went undercover after a year of being a guard, working as a guard in a prison. He was coming home being abusive to his wife and kids. If you're in an environment that's just saturated with negative energy and tension, and there's just this aggressive, constant aggressive, threatening feel to it, that energy just consumes you. And guards come in with this look on their faces. A new prisoner or a new guard is called a fish. So a fish guard will come in with this look on their face, and they'll talk to the prisoners and they'll be sympathetic, and 6 months later their faces are stone, they're unemotional, and they're not talking to the prisoners and they're not helping the prisoners. The atmosphere just completely took over them, and they become a product of their environment. And that's what I saw over and over again. The prisoners know the guards coming in are fresh, are easy touches. You know, they might get a favour out of them, or they might get something out of them. But 6 months or a year down the road, you know, they've either hardened up or they've quit because they couldn't take the environment. Yeah. Right, next question, please.
Do you think your prison experience has changed you as a person?
Yeah. My prison experience has completely changed me as a person and saved my life. You know, how are we doing on that?
I've got like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Should I stop it?
Yeah, let's stop it now. We'll do it again. We'll start again.